Good evening, all. Thanks for joining us tonight on this rainy evening in Memphis, although some of you may be calling in from various places around the South and the US. But we're really excited to have this panel today around reimagining food security in the age of COVID. This panel came out of my own students, or our students actually, with the Food Recovery Network here at Rhodes College, and their interests in terms of wanting to learn more what the city was doing during the pandemic. And this has been a question that I've often fielded in the classroom with my students. And so we felt that it was actually really important to address these elements to the larger community, to the Rhodes community, and the broader Memphis community as well. So here we are today, and we have a great panel of a variety of food activists here within Memphis. And so we're going to start out a little bit today just talking about the overall mission of each of our panelists and their institutions and the programmatic activities that they're doing. We have a variety of folks coming from those organizations: Sally Heinz from MIFA, Mia Madison from Memphis Tilth. We have Timothy Netters, a grower and from the Riverside community, Haley Scruggs from the Mid-South Food Bank, and Brittany Stout. So those are our 5 panelists, and we're looking forward to hearing from them today. In terms of Memphis itself, one of the things that I often communicate or talk with individuals about is the fact that we're kind of in this weird paradox. We are often one of the most hungriest cities in America, but often also one of the most obese. And so we have this kind of interesting cultural paradox that we're working through, and it's even become more exacerbated, I should say, as the pandemic has hit since March. And what I also want to just show to you all is, if I can just quickly, here we go. Here's a slide that our Food Recovery Network shared this with our panelists, and attempting to kind of give them fodder for thinking about how COVID has impacted Memphis since this time period has arisen. And you can kind of see, like, it's, in terms of food insecurity, from 2006, not that it to some degree has decreased, I should say, in some demographics across the United States up until about 2018. What's interesting here, if you pay attention to really the right side of the graphic, is starting in that March time period, from June until June, and these certain time periods across the summer, we have this really stark contrast between those earlier years in 2018 and what's happening today. And so this is something that we're going to continually look at and evaluate within this particular panel. The organizations are going to talk about where do we need to go? We're having, obviously our cases are spiking even as we speak. What is this going to look like for our residents, for our students, for our youth here within the city, those that need access or better access to food resources? So we're going to really dive into those questions here today. All the questions, I should say, will be provided or have been provided actually by our Rhodes Student Food Recovery Network, which is a student-led organization here that basically gleans off of leftover food within our cafeteria here at Rhodes and distributes it out into certain arenas in Memphis. One of them is the First Congo Church. Another one is St. John's Church. And they work really hard at providing those, I should say, gleaned foods to other areas and organizations that can continually use it, and kind of repurposing it or putting it into other types of dinner or lunch arenas. So that Food Recovery Network, they have a diversity of interests though. So it's not just tied to gleaning or food recovery itself, but they're also very much interested in issues of food justice and activism here in the city. So hence why we have this wonderful panel. So what we're first going to do here for the first about 25 minutes from now on, each of the panelists will just talk about their organization, and then also what the organization, the programmatic activities tied to that. And we're going to have first up, we'll have Sally Heinz, the president and CEO of the Metropolitan Interfaith Organization, also known as MIFA.
Thank you, Kimberly, and thanks for having me here tonight. I'm really excited to be here. I'm a Rhodes grad, so that just makes it really nice to be with you all this evening too. At MIFA, we have, our mission is to support the independence of vulnerable seniors and families in crisis. And we have two programs that are specific to the issue of hunger and food insecurity. And I'm going to describe them now really sort of as in pre-pandemic operations. I think in a later question, I'll talk more about what the pandemic has done to us operationally and service numbers. But our first program related to food insecurity is our food voucher program for families. Overall, MIFA's family programs are designed to prevent homelessness, stabilize families, and encourage independence. Our programs offer a spectrum of interventions designed to address the vulnerabilities that could lead a family to homelessness. So these interventions may start with something as basic as food, utility or rent assistance for a family facing a crisis such as a job layoff or an unexpected medical emergency. And then our programs progress all the way to providing permanent housing for families experiencing homelessness. But for that basic assistance, if you think of a mother who's forced to choose between two immediate needs for her family, putting food on the table or paying the utility bill, we don't think a mother should have to make that choice. So we are able to provide assistance. For food, MIFA partners with congregations across the city that host food pantries. Our staff screens clients and provides vouchers that can be redeemed for food at a pantry that is close to where that family resides. In our last full fiscal year, MIFA provided almost 10,000 food vouchers to families seeking assistance. The second program is our senior nutrition program, and I'll probably focus this evening a little bit more on what we do for our older neighbors for nutrition. Chances are you are familiar with Meals on Wheels. Almost every community has a Meals on Wheels program, and MIFA has provided home delivered meals to senior neighbors in our community since the late 1970s. This 5-day delivery of hot meals is meant to support our seniors and allow them to remain living independent in their homes for as long as possible. The majority of our meals are delivered by volunteers. And of course, the delivery is about more than food, right? The meals volunteer may be the only person that senior client sees each day. That isolation is hard. Well, now it may not be as hard for us to imagine as it was before the pandemic, but many seniors in our community face that isolation day in and day out. Currently, we serve about 1,300 home delivered meals clients. We survey our clients every year and they tell us that they are able to eat healthier foods. They tell us they have access to more than one meal a day. So think about that. We're delivering one meal, and because we're delivering one meal, they have access to more than one meal. They tell us that they maintain their weight. The program allows them to continue to live at home, and they tell us that they feel less lonely. The need in our community, even before the pandemic, is far greater than our current resources. The waiting list for Meals on Wheels that is maintained by the Aging Commission of the Mid-South has hovered close to 1,000 for the past months and before the pandemic. Most of the funding for Meals on Wheels comes through the Older Americans Act, and that is administered locally by the Aging Commission. According to the most recent State of Senior Hunger study that was released in May 2020, and based on 2018 data, Memphis has the highest level of food insecurity for seniors of any large metropolitan area in America at 15.6%. I'm going to say that one more time because I think it's just so sad. Memphis has the highest level of food insecurity for seniors of any large American city at 15.6%. We know the program benefits the health of seniors in our community in more ways than just providing a meal. Social determinants of health are those social, economic, and environmental factors that affect an individual's health and quality of life. Factors such as financial security, social connectedness, aging in place, as well as access to food. And Meals on Wheels positively affects all of those determinants. And it's an incredibly economical way. A meal costs less than $9 to prepare and deliver, to make a huge difference for the health of our seniors, and therefore for our whole community. We also, at least pre-pandemic, serve 800 additional seniors at congregate sites in Shelby County. We serve meals at senior centers, and these are for seniors who are more mobile. And so they are able to get out for a meal and also for some social interaction. And I will stop there and let the next panelist go, and look forward to coming back in a few minutes.
Thank you, Sally. Our next panelist, and I just want to, I realize that I did not add, during this next 20 minutes where the rest of our panelists they're going to bring forth their programmatic activities and what they're doing, we are going to have a kind of a generalized Q&A, some questions that both the Food Recovery Network have crafted, and then also questions that the audience will have. So as our panelists are talking, feel free to, write into the Q&A any questions that may arrive, commentary, and we will incorporate that into the panel as we kind of proceed forward. Okay, so next up we have Mia Madison, the Executive Director for Memphis Tilth.
Thank you, Kimberly. Hello, everyone. My name is Mia Madison. I'm the Executive Director of Memphis Tilth, and our mission is to cultivate collective action for an economically sustainable, socially equitable, environmentally sound local food system. And we do that through 3 different programs: Grow Local, Cook Together, and Farm Direct. For this panel discussion, I'd like to focus our food recovery efforts in each one of those particular programs. In our Grow Local program, we run a few different initiatives. Our St. Paul Garden in the 38126 community is a community garden that is open to the public, where they can grow alongside us and harvest food from that site. We also have the St. Jude Garden that's located on the St. Jude campus, and that creates a local food sustainable source for the community of St. Jude. We also launched the St. James Garden in the 38108 community, Hollywood Hyde Park. That site is still under plan, but it also coincides with the Chelsea Avenue Farmers Market. Through opportunity to expand at that site with community lift, we'll see growing and an available market there in the 2021 farmers market season. So I think I've described all 3 of our garden and growing sites, and each one of those sites provides seeds where we give back to the community the availability of them to grow through the seed bank at the Benjamin Hooks Library. It is our goal to have everyone growing for a sustainable source of food. People generally ask, what can I do to just begin growing? And my first suggestion is to grab a seed. Even if you get a pot or if you want to grow in the dirt in your yard, or if you don't have a yard and you live in an apartment, there's aquaponics opportunities. There are meaning growing with fish and water where you can have a protein source alongside your vegetables. But the seed bank specifically is where we provide access to food that you must create, but access to food. And so through our other programs, Cook Together, we provide recipes and cooking demonstrations and classes. We provide a seniors eating well class. We did that in conjunction with the City of Memphis Parks and Neighborhoods to provide nutritional education for their cooks and meal preparers, so that seniors at those locations who are looking for meals will find whole foods provided by the city there that they purchase from local food providers, but also the availability of understanding what whole food does to the nutrition, especially during the pandemic, and staying healthy and building up that immune system. Our Farm Direct program has our Pay It Forward program operated through the Bring It Food Hub. Bring It Food Hub is an aggregation distribution nonprofit operation that aggregates food from farms within 150 miles. We support farmer livelihood by providing them with the economic opportunity to tap into Memphis markets. Our members of the Bring It Food Hub CSA produce subscription have the availability to pay it forward by purchasing or donating $25. They're actually purchasing a bag of local vegetables from farmers within our network to be provided to them per week. So $25 will purchase a bag of vegetables for a family, and that can feed 2 to 3 people. And it's a supplement, but it is provided by the community in a way in which we believe provides access to community members. I'd love to answer any questions, or looking forward to entering into the discussion. Kimberly, I'll turn it back over to you, but that's just a little more about Memphis Tilth.
Great, thank you, Mia.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it. So up next, we have Haley Scruggs, the Community Relations Manager from the Mid-South Food Bank.
Hi, thank you, Kimberly. I'm really excited to share with you about the food bank. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully I do it correctly. Oh, it's not going to let me. Sorry, I'm hooked up to like 5 monitors. So the mission of the food bank is to change lives by eliminating hunger in the Mid-South. And our vision is to turn hunger into hope. And we service 31 counties throughout the Mid-South. That's 12 in West Tennessee, 18 in North Mississippi, and 1 in Arkansas, Princeton County. And we have over 300 partner agencies. Those include churches, soup kitchens, homeless shelters, camps, anywhere that basically provides food for their community. And I think the best way to describe the food bank is to take an actual monetary bank. So when you think of the U.S. Mint, we are the U.S. Mint for those agencies. We don't have direct contact with people that actually need food from the food bank. We only, associate with the partner agencies. So a few of our programs that we have to address hunger are the food pickup from retail. That's where we actually go to Kroger or Target, Walmart, anywhere that has a grocery section. And we pick up items that are close to their freshness date. They might be dented cans. It could just be actually fruits and vegetables that aren't considered attractive enough to sell in the store. And we'll pick those up and to actually sell those to, not sell them, but we'll provide them to the agency. We also build relationships with local farmers. We do Meal Connect, which is like when we have a big event, say at the convention center, or after a concert, or even Memphis in May, we'll pick up that already prepared food and immediately take it to an agency that can provide a meal for people that night or the next day. And then we help people with the application to SNAP. A lot of people don't apply to SNAP because the application process, they think it's too complicated and things like that. So we help people apply to SNAP. We have our mobile pantry distribution program, which you might have seen this around town. We had actually 11 today, 9 of them were in partnership with the Shelby County school system. And that is where volunteers set up the food that we provide. The mobile pantry is completely operated by an agency that goes through, all of our agencies go through an application process to make sure everybody is following the federal rules and the health code and everything like that. So those partner agencies actually get the food from us, we deliver it, and then they have volunteers that distribute the food. So it's pretty contactless, which is great. We started the program probably 2 years ago, but it's been a great addition to our COVID response because volunteers just place the food in the car. So there's no contact at all. And then again, our partner agencies make up about 80% of our distribution. So from fiscal year 2019, which is our fiscal year starts in June and ends in July. No, begins in July, sorry, and ends in June. So fiscal year 2019 compared to 2020, which is when we started our COVID response, our distribution growth was 96%. So we went from distributing about 1.5 million pounds a month to almost tripling that. So our distribution total for last fiscal year was 31.8 million pounds. And so far this year, which from July until Monday of this week, so July 1 to 10/26, we've distributed 20.6 million pounds of food. And that's across our 31 county service area. And so we get our hunger, food insecurity rate information from Feeding America. We are a food bank under that organization. And for COVID, our numbers for the Mid-South jumped from 17%, which is higher than the national average at 11.5%. And Feeding America estimates that it jumps to 24.5% due to COVID. And that equals to about 455,000 people. And 30% of those people are children. So that's about 136,000. And we have those mobile pantries. We have some that are specifically targeted towards certain audiences. So we have some for our senior citizens with food that is softer and things like that for them. And then we have mobile pantries for children. Like today, they were all at schools, and those have more cereals, more peanut butter, jelly type thing, macaroni and cheese, things that kids like and want to eat. For our COVID response, since March 12th, that's when we began our COVID response. Through mobile pantries alone, we distributed 21.8 million pounds of food, and our partner agencies distributed about 17.8 million pounds of food. So far for our COVID response, we've distributed 39.6 million pounds of food. Again, that's like tripling what we've done in the years past. And then a big part of our program, we like to not only feed people, but reduce food waste. And part of that is our retail pickup and our Meal Connect programs. For retail pickup, we gathered about 7 million pounds of food from retail stores, again, like Kroger, Walmart, Aldi. Sam's Club, Sprouts, Save-A-Lot. And that is something that I see daily. I walk through the warehouse all the time, and we have a whole room where people go through and make sure that food is okay to distribute back out into agencies. And then our Meal Connect program, over last year, we got 3.8 million pounds of food. That is kind of a smaller program. We're working to grow that and work with more events and connect those already prepared meals to soup kitchens and things like that. I'm sorry, my dog got out. And then we also like to, another program that we're trying to grow is building relationships with local farmers, because 40% of their unsold crops are destroyed. So we want to save that food to make sure it's going back out into human consumption instead of compost. And then I think last year, so FY20, we received 2.4 million pounds of food from local farmers. And our SNAP assistant program is very important to us because of our senior citizens. About 80% of elderly SNAP participants only receive about $105 a month to put towards food. And about 17.3% of seniors in the Mid-South live food insecure. So we have a lot of programs that are specifically targeted to different audiences, including seniors, and our child nutrition program, where we actually have pantries inside schools. We have a backpack program where kids can take home a box full of food that will feed their family, or not meant to feed a complete meal, but supplements their daily allotment for food that they already have. So I'm done. I'm looking forward to answering questions. I'm going to turn it back to you, Kimberly.
Great. Thank you, Haley. And we also then have Brittany Stout, Food Programs Coordinator from the Works, and that is also tied to the South Memphis Farmers Market.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Honored to be a part of this panel. So my name is Brittany Stout, and I'm the Food Programs Coordinator at the Works Incorporated, which is a nonprofit community development corporation in South Memphis. We started in 1998. To give you a little bit of a backdrop on our general organization, as Kimberly mentioned, we do operate the South Memphis Farmers Market. It's under the larger umbrella of the Works Incorporated. So we were started in an effort to actually by a local church in South Memphis originally to address issues of housing challenges around the neighborhood. So the main thrust of our organization is actually housing assistance. But through that, we came to find pretty quickly that housing is an overlapping issue with a lot of other things. So it's it intersects with food as well. So in 2010, in partnership with University of Memphis, I believe, we worked on the SOMI RAP plan, which is the South Memphis Revitalization Action Plan. And this plan basically was a research project over the course of, I think, 1.5 years or so. Basically, a lot of people around South Memphis were interviewed, people that already had relationships with the Works, and people that had relationships with U of M, and people involved in organizations around the neighborhood were brought together in one-on-one interviews and also group discussions to ask, what would you like to see in your neighborhood, instead of what's wrong with your neighborhood, what can we add to make the neighborhood better than what it is, and how can we listen to the voices of the people who live here. And out of that grew the South Memphis Farmers Market. So that was the first initiative of the SOMI RAP plan. And I believe the plan is still happening and still taking steps here and there, but this was the first action step, was to build the South Memphis Farmers Market. So the Works Incorporated begun the South Memphis Farmers Market in, I believe, July of 2010. And since then, this was our 11th season. We just completed our 11th season in the end of September. And we've been able to serve thousands of people through the farmers market. Basically, our farmers market, I don't know if any of y'all have had a chance to stop by, but we host anywhere from 5 to 9 vendors throughout the season, each Thursday from 8 o'clock to 1 in the summertime. And basically, the main thrust of the farmers market is to create food access, particularly to fresh produce in the neighborhood. So we're located at Mississippi Boulevard, kind of a main thoroughfare in South Memphis. And through that, we're able to provide food to particularly seniors in the neighborhood who are experiencing food insecurity, but also people of all ages. Through the farmers market, we're able to accept farmers market nutrition program vouchers. I might not have the exact name correct, but it's a state government run program. We were able to accept the vouchers. Our farmers can accept them, which is great for farmers' income and also great for neighbors who need assistance with purchasing their produce. We also accept SNAP and EBT, debit, credit, cash, so a lot of different forms of payment, which makes it accessible to more people. And the farmers market layout is kind of designed to give more choice in the matter for people who are coming to get produce. Even if they're using vouchers, they get to choose what produce they would like, which farmer they would like to buy from, which creates kind of the ability to just choose and to join in your food decisions, which is what we're definitely going for. So out of the farmers market in 2014, kind of the rest of our programs kind of followed organically after. So we realized, so we have fresh produce access in the summertime, but what about throughout the year? How can we create food access? Not only at the local level, not only during the summer and just fresh produce, but what about staple items that are maybe not offered in the corner stores or the fast food restaurants nearby? Because we are located in a food desert, the closest large-scale grocery store is over 3 miles away from us. So thinking about that, we were able to get a grant to renovate the building next door to our farmers market lot. And we were able to open the indoor grocery store, which is open. It's a mini grocery store that we built, and it's open year round from 10 to 6, Monday through Saturdays. And through that, we're able to offer different forms of fresh produce, seasonal fresh produce, as well as meats, canned goods, paper towels, diapers, general just things that people need access to that aren't currently being offered in our area. So that's kind of our second program from the farmers market in terms of food access. And then our third program grew out of the grocery store. Next door, we were able to build a commercial kitchen, and we use that for educational purposes. So I was talking about growing organically out of the farmers market. Once we were, I believe it was 2015, I think, once we were kind of in the swing of things with the farmers market, realizing, okay, we have food access, but how do we also pair that with education? A lot of people know already what to do with different forms of produce, but some people may be not familiar with certain things, or just maybe kind of not knowing how to use certain produce, or just curious about different forms of produce. And so out of that, we built the cooking class opportunities at our kitchen. We run through a national program called Cooking Matters National. It's run through a program called Share Our Strength. So with funding from them, we're able to offer year-round cooking classes. And these cooking classes are focused on nutrition education and eating healthy, specifically on a budget. So in the classes are focused, they're 6 weeks long. We meet once a week for 6 weeks. And we cover a curriculum, but also the classes are focused on participatory learning. So we cook everything in the class. We break into groups and talk together, hang out as we cook. And then we gather to eat our meal at the end of the class. So the classes are really relationally focused around food, which we believe food is a sacred cultural thing. It's a thing that brings people together. It's a thing to be enjoyed together. So beyond just getting food, how do we engage with it well and learn from each other? So the classes are also relationally based. And since, I believe, between 2018 and the current month, we've had 339 participants through our 6-week program. And we've also had, I believe, a total of 36 classes up until March. Things kind of transitioned with the pandemic, so I'll get to that in a moment. But yeah, so my main role is to coordinate all of our cooking classes and manage our farmers market. And then Devin Marzette, my coworker, manages the indoor grocery store throughout the year. So in terms of the pandemic, it's obviously changed how we do some things. So basically in March, we kind of moved from a rehabilitation development model to a relief model. So we began distributing bags to seniors who are in need in our neighborhood, particularly men and women who are 60 years or over living in 38106 or 38109. And we were able to get a grant to basically distribute produce and eggs, milk, general staple items, and hand deliver them to people's houses of those who are in need, who we had contact with. We also reached out to local organizations to see if they personally knew people who were in need. And we were able to distribute 567 bags, I believe, up as of last Thursday. So we did a lot of intense relief work from March, I would say, to around mid-June when we started the farmers market. And then we picked up a bi-monthly program for a specific group of about 25 seniors since September. So kind of the idea is a lot of people are struggling to get to grocery stores, especially seniors who are already experiencing food inaccessibility, but are also rightfully so worried about going to the grocery store in the midst of a pandemic. So we're able to focus on them and provide groceries to them directly at no cost. And then we also, through the farmers market, we were able to keep the farmers market open. We mandated wearing masks and lots of hand sanitizer, spreading out our vendors. We made, adjustments to make it more safe for everyone. But it is located outdoors, so we were able to still keep it running. And that was huge for allowing people to still access food. We actually saw an increase in our numbers this season during the month of July. So that was good to know that people still wanted the farmers market. They still saw it as a valuable place to come and were able to come still in the midst of the pandemic. And then lastly, almost done, we began online cooking courses as of 4 weeks ago. So we just finished our first course. We're transitioning to online learning in terms of cooking. And basically the layout looks like we're running one 4-week session and then one 6-week session and kind of playing around with what works, what doesn't work. We're still in the kind of just trying out different things stage. So we don't really have that set yet. But we're still running the Cooking Matters curriculum, and we've adjusted to 30-minute sessions of nutrition education online with a small group of people. And then we're able to provide the free produce still, and people come and pick it up from our farmers market, and then they bring it home to cook at home. So it's got a little bit different layout than it obviously usually does, but we're able to serve in that way and continue nutrition education and focus as much as we can on relational engagement and connections within the group of people taking the class together. It's obviously a little bit more difficult over a Zoom call, but still making efforts to make sure that happens. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of the big overview of what we're doing at the Works in terms of food programming. So.
Great. That's wonderful, Brittany. I mean, what I'm paying attention to as these folks are kind of giving a background of their organizations and the work that they're doing is some of the statistics, and I think just the general need within our communities for food access or increasing food access. We have one more presenter, one more panelist going, and then we'll open it up to questions and having the panelists engage with each other. But we have Tim Netters here, and if you may see, he may pop up as Mia Madison. He's going to actually, his video is not working right now, and so he's actually going to just talk to us in terms via audio. Okay. I'm going to see if we can make this work. And Tim, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So, all right, I am going to, you can take it off and let us know what you're up to.
Okay, awesome. I'm Tim Netter. I'm the executive director of the Riverside Renaissance Initiative. It's a community advocacy group that we started over here in South Memphis, the Riverside area, 38109 for you all that may not be aware. And basically what we've done is build a community garden in the neighborhood, and we're actually trying to build a few of those and bolster a tree farm within the community also. And leading up until this point, you know, we've held several cleanups throughout the community, getting rid of blight, all that sort of stuff. And the main thing we're focused on now, you know, getting through the pandemic, obviously, is getting the churches together to come and help harvest this stuff and service the community that way. So that's pretty much it.
Well, thank you. So one of the things that I just want to mention, and maybe as the panelists, if they want to kind of pop back on and putting their video, and certainly Tim, you can join us via audio. But we, for the first time, actually had what was called the Memphis Food Summit, and where we got together, and I know some of our panelists were there this past Thursday. And one of the things that even we've been recognizing as we have run the Overton Park Community Farmers Market and other kind of food justice based programs or activities is that everyone was kind of in their different silos when it comes to the work that we're doing around increasing food access. And so this panel is also part of that, of trying to bring us together and starting more collaborative conversations. Me and I always talk about this. We're like, why don't we work together more? But just broadly. And so I think we're at a crux right now within the food world or the food access world here in Memphis, and addressing some of these issues where we're starting to see some larger, I would say, systemic and also sustainable ways to address these issues within our Memphis community. And so I'm hoping that this conversation actually helps to add to that effort. And particularly, we're also bouncing off of what just happened on last Thursday, tied to the food summit that was run by the Church Health Center, and some really invigorating conversations actually happened in that space as well. So I'm excited to see what we also talk about today. So the first question though, and please, if you have questions, please put them into the Q&A. We'd be happy to answer them, and I will incorporate them as we're kind of talking. But the Food Security Network, they first kind of wanted to ask you what pandemic adaptation, and they're saying that we've had to have made in our lives, has actually been the most detrimental for food access in our communities. So is there a pandemic adaptation that we've made, maybe the general public or just Memphis or even the United States, that has been most detrimental for food access in communities?
Kimberly, I'll take a stab at that one for MIFA. I think the adaptation that has been most detrimental for us has been the loss of volunteers. And that, of course, because of folks not wanting to risk exposure and keeping interactions to a minimum. And I think all of us who were if we can remember back to March, which seems so long ago, but things changed so quickly, and safety protocol was changing every day, and recommendations of what to do was changing every day. And our volunteers were understandably really nervous about exposing themselves, but also about exposing clients to COVID. Others have mentioned that and changes they made in their program. And again, we were trying to get, we had 100 to 150 volunteers every weekday at MIFA getting 1,300 clients, seniors, their meals. So, but we were really determined that we weren't going to leave those seniors without food. Others have mentioned the fact that our seniors are, especially vulnerable and also so isolated. If you see things in the news right now about how isolation is affecting seniors and people in care homes, it's just really, really sad. And we also wanted to get extra food into the homes because we knew those seniors might not be having other relatives or folks coming. And if something happened in our own kitchen and we had to be shut down, we wanted those seniors to have supplies shelf stable or frozen or whatever we could get to them. So we have changed our delivery. We now deliver 3 days a week instead of 5. And we take an extra frozen or shelf stable to cover those days that we are not delivering in person. Early on in the pandemic, we partnered with the city of Memphis, and they let library employees who were not working in the libraries because they were closed. So they gave us library employees to help us deliver, which was fabulous. Slowly, our volunteers are coming back. We're still below where we were pre-pandemic. A silver lining, one thing we have added is a safety check-in call. So on those days that we aren't delivering, we have volunteers calling, and we've realized what a wonderful sort of volunteer opportunity and extra layer that is. And so that may be sort of a pandemic silver lining that we continue. Our congregate meals clients are picking up meals once a week and kind of a grab and go. So they go where they used to dine communally, and staff gives them a box of frozen or shelf stable for the week. Our food pantry partnership has suffered. So many of those pantries closed again because they were volunteer run. So we are really still not, haven't really reopened, or a lot of those pantries have not reopened. We are so grateful to the food bank because, the food bank, I have to say, has just done phenomenal work with their mobile pantries and reaching people and being able to help, I think, that population that we used to be seeing in our food voucher program. So I'm grateful for them. Thanks.
So Haley, you may be able to answer this as well, but I was thinking about, and kind of in alignment with what Sally is just talking about, but thinking about how distribution, and our next question here is really how the pandemic affected areas of food production, distribution, and consumption. But one of the things is, like, as food in the food bank system, was that affected by, say, like, where you were obtaining foods that were coming in? Like, it seems like you increased your volume. Like, where did that volume come from? And like, these are some of the I was like, wow, like you went from what, like X to what, 20 million, right? And
yeah, we tripled our distribution number. So basically, thankfully, the USDA has that program, farmers to family. Food boxes have really supplemented a lot of that. And then our donor relations on the food side has actually worked day and night to get just different sources of food. So it really worked hard to find those different pockets and buy early. As soon as I think, I wasn't here at the beginning, so I can't really say exactly how she did it, but I think even at the beginning of March, before we officially went into our COVID response disaster relief, she started buying immediately, just bulk and like tons of food. And the CEO, our CEO, Kathy Pope, just gave her the go ahead and said, we'll find the funding. Like, we have to do this, so we'll just find it somewhere. And thankfully we have. And people say this all the time, but Memphis and the Mid-South, it's a really giving community. So they've just given back so much. We still get people call all the time asking if they could do a donation drive, whether it's food or like a monetary, and we're like, yeah, totally, like things like that. So we just live in a great community that wants to help. But for food sourcing, definitely, her name's Angela Johnson. She's amazing, and she just tried to look for any kind of source of food that we could get, and she got in there early. And then the USDA program really helped. And in those boxes, there are 28 pounds, and there's a dairy box that has milk, cheese, just any kind of dairy product, liquid milk, and things like that. And then the produce box that has fresh vegetables, fruits, and those kind of items in that box. And those come from local farmers. The dairy box comes from Prairie Farms, and the produce box comes from Palazoa. So it's helping on both ends of the spectrum. It's helping the farmers sell product, and it's actually, so they're not going, that's not going to waste. That food is going to people in the community to eat. So.
Mia, it seemed like you had something to say, or are you just smiling? Yep, you're on mute.
So, we talk a lot about what local food looks like and how we're accessing it. When we go to farmers markets and we engage farmers in those spaces, we're directly supporting someone's livelihood. When we think about access to food and access to resources, those in communities who lack the access to grocery stores may find that access is kind of supplemented in ways in which they can get to SNAP benefits, or they can get to some type of I'm trying to say resource like MIFA, Meals on Wheels, and those types of resources. However, farmers don't have the availability of those resources. So we directly buy from farmers, and generally throughout COVID, we've aggregated from them about 4,000 pounds of food per week. And so we try to spread that around local farmers within 150 miles of Memphis so that they have the access to really the resources to pay their bills. They still have to buy seed. They still have to provide another seasonal crop. We're still in COVID. Food that was grown in the spring that had no destination has now been consumed. And so what will come of the next season's crops? Where will they go? Will farmers be able to actually plant those foods? When we look at aggregation in Memphis and actually who's growing, some of the farmers are and growers have such small of a crop that only CSA, Farmers Market, and Bring It Food Hub could provide them with that livelihood. So of those 4,000 pounds of food that we aggregate, and that's just in one season. So if you take into account that we are now in our third season of COVID from spring, summer, and fall, we are now looking at a deep winter where farmers aren't planting as much. There's not as much food that is available to come into our community. And so as we think about ways in which we have access to food, having more people growing in a local environment means more access to food. And that just doesn't take into account low income communities. Access in the Shelby County community looks a lot like everywhere. There's at least 3 miles to the closest grocery store. I'm a suburban kid and we drove to the grocery store, but if our car broke down or if we got a flat, and when we think about seniors who can't get to grocery stores, sometimes that looks like ordering food. So that's why Bring It Food Hub provides access to those communities at a low cost. 5 vegetables for $25. We do home delivery, and we served over, I wrote this number down. We served over 2,155 people throughout the last 3 seasons. And so that looks like about 500 people per season. And there are other communities, organizations that are working on distributing food that are here in the panel today, and not just them. So if I'm only serving 500 people out of a city, just the city of 650,000+, and we're only aggregating from farms that are within 150 miles of Memphis, should something like a catastrophe happen, we have a scarcity of food, very scarce amounts of food that we can distribute to all that our residents. And so that's why, to me, it's important that agriculture is such an important aspect of our communities. So I want to come down off my soapbox here, and because
we like your soapbox, though. It's good. I mean, but these are and this is what I think maybe we can follow up with a question or open that up. Like, but what do you all think is the most pressing issue right now tied to food during COVID? You know, I think agriculture is a huge component, right? And there's these arenas, right? So we have things from the production side to distribution, then even I would say, you know, and consumption. But what do you all think? Or I mean, Mia just talked about the ag side and production, but are there other major issues that are emerging in these arenas that we have to keep an eye on?
I'm just going to throw it out there, the loss of jobs. The loss of jobs, we have low-income communities that have been historically low-income communities, but as we see the loss of jobs and through social distancing and COVID, we see a lot more people in suburban and rural communities who lack the access to healthy foods, and we see the demand for that access and how they will get to resources. So I just wanted to throw that out there. There's someone in Collierville right now who can't get to a grocery store, not because they don't have the transportation, but because they can't afford the food when they get there.
And I would add that our senior population is growing and growing and growing. The silver tsunami or whatever that is coming. So, the number as I mentioned, the number on the waiting list was too high pre-pandemic. And it's, we're getting some CARES Act and some Families First Act funding to, in fact, actually take some seniors off of that waiting list, which is fabulous. But a lot of us who have worked in nonprofits for me for a long time, anyway, me not quite as long, know that, after a crisis, things go back maybe to funding goes back to pre-crisis levels, but that need doesn't go away. It's going to be here with us to come, for months to come.
Mm-hmm.
So long-term funding, long-term sustainable funding is my other.
Yes.
Well, and this is where I would say, like within the food world or food insecurity world, that we tend to rely on philanthropy, right? And churches and those providing, everything from food pantries to even helping in food bank, aspects. And I think that people don't recognize, they think that the government is often supplying like massive dose, amounts of money, and they really aren't. It's coming from people's donations, and those are really feeding the poor within our or lower, socioeconomic individuals and families within our communities. And this is, go ahead, Mia.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say absolutely. If not for individual donations throughout COVID and the availability of really dedicated followers of agriculture, sustainability in Memphis Tilth, we would have not been able to survive the coronavirus pandemic. We saw an uptick in the number of people who wanted to provide pay it forward opportunities to those regardless of where they were. We received calls from our partner communities of faith who purchased seasons of produce subscriptions to give out in their communities of faith. We had one specific donor to buy over 200 pay it forward bags. And we had over 500 pounds of food per week donated from the St. Jude Garden that went to the 38126 community, 38107, and 38108 communities. Because during COVID, St. Jude went to a complete lockdown. And to maintain the garden space, we continued to manage what was growing there. And because we had already planted foods, the foods that were harvested could not go into the cafeteria where they would normally receive it. And so to not have that food go to waste, we passed it out in communities. And so I just wanted to share that how community rallies through donation of not just funds. Those funds go on to help create more access, but the giving of time has also increased in places where people who just couldn't stay at home and were willing to be coronavirus tested on a regular basis were volunteering in spaces where they could, like with MIFA and with Tilth.
Let me ask, and maybe Brittany and even Haley, you can talk a little bit about this, but how, say, consumption has changed for folks. I mean, Brittany, I don't know if it seems like you had an awful lot of people signing up for cooking classes, right? Which I was really surprised with that number. So and maybe these are some parts of me are here are the negative elements, right? Of where job loss and decreasing, I would say, people's financial stability, which is then gonna, decrease their ability to buy foodstuffs. But then at the same time, maybe what are some of the positives that are coming into the community in terms of consumption that you've been able to, the work seems to be able to really foster?
Yeah, in terms of kind of surprising positive changes through the pandemic, we've had a pretty steady interest in our cooking classes, but that hasn't wavered with the pandemic. And I think that has to do with, well, I guess in one sense, if you're experiencing a bunch of different stressors, probably the first thing that you're going to give up, or one of the first things, is worrying about eating healthy on top of everything else. So I'm really happy that people are still interested, and it hopefully shows that people are still able to and interested in dedicating some time to that in the midst of a lot of difficult things that they're already navigating. But yeah, I think also there's something special about, even if it's over Zoom, of coming together to do something. So I think even in isolation, a lot of older people looking for ways to connect, things to do, and let's jump in and take a cooking class. And it's a good avenue for connection. A majority of the people who are currently taking our class, well, the 2 classes that we've done so far in the pandemic, we're still rolling them out, but they've been majority seniors, and they've really enjoyed the classes based on our surveys. And I think that goes to show that even in the midst of not being able to run actual classes in person, there's a way to kind of, somebody, I think it might have been Sally, had mentioned the challenges of isolation. It's in a way indirectly fighting that, as well as giving opportunities for nutrition education. So in that way, it's a win-win. Definitely not optimal in terms of like actually cooking over a screen is kind of interesting. And I'm sure Mia knows what that's about with her cooking program. So, but yeah, so that's kind of what I would say. It's been really helpful for, it seems like for people who are isolated.
I would say, Brittany, I was always excited when I came to the farmer's market on Thursday, the number of people that I would see over there. It was always encouraging to see, in the number of seniors who were in the kitchen and just bouncing about and really enjoying that space. And having the farmer's market there for them is really great. I can see it all over them is what I'm trying to say.
Timothy, have you noticed, and this is kind of a play off of what Brittany was saying in terms of her cooking classes, but what about people getting involved in terms of growing? Like, I know Mia was saying we need more ag, right? But like, have more community members, are they interested in community farms or urban farms, or is that interest increased at all? Growing on their own. I mean, just to give you the audience, just to give you some background, World War II, it's estimated, these victory gardens, it's estimated that people within their households, 80 to 90% of households actually had these victory gardens and grew their own produce. And that was even here in Memphis. So.
Well, I've noticed more people coming out and consuming the produce, but I can't entirely say that people have, just caught on to the aspect of, everyone taking up agriculture. However, that's a small step in the right direction. If you got people looking and walking through there and asking questions, hopefully that bolster some interest, in the community.
I always have a follow-up, right? I always have a follow-up. So I don't know why I haven't mentioned before that we ran our first introductory urban agriculture academy this past summer during the COVID-19 social distancing. I think we were still in phase 1 as we launched the program. We had 43 participants to register. Half of them paid a fee and the other half were scholarships. So it was a 1-to-1. So for every person that registered, there was a scholarship that was offered. And that was a 5-week online training course that had applied learning opportunities to coincide with them. And we ran that particular program out along with community partners like the Compost Ferry and Ounce of Hope, High Point Hemp. We also worked with our community partner, Arba Assumes, to do Sad to Soul cooking demonstrations. And most people know she is an awesome demonstrator, cooking demonstrator. And so has worked with a number of people around the community of Memphis. And that program specifically was to encourage to get more people growing, get more people interested in ag. We did a distribution of seeds we actually just provided them curbside. Once the libraries closed, as Sally mentioned, people could not get to the seed library at the Benjamin Hooks Library. And so we rolled up our door here at 575 Suzette and people came by and I put them on the table and they just kind of picked them up. And it was a great way. People asked questions. So it was almost like direct technical assistance. We've had more people call. We've had more people start farms because we do farm incubation with people. We've had so many people reach out to us, not just in Memphis. We've had a national reach into the Memphis community on how to partner with getting more people growing. So we have visitors from Thrive Lot. We've talked with Indigo Ag and TCAT on how their digital agronomy program can take into account some of the growing spaces. And then entrepreneurial opportunities for growers that looks like taking vacant land and turning it into an economic opportunity. I'm always looking to purchase food that is hyper local. Hyper local to me means in the city of Memphis. if we're growing in the city of Memphis and you have a crop where I could source anywhere from 25 to 400 pounds, if you have it, I want to buy it. And that's how we create that local food system. I would continue to support the farmers in Arkansas, in Mississippi, and in rural Tennessee outside of Memphis. But if I could get all of that food within 265 square miles of Memphis, that is Memphis, we could definitely make that an economic opportunity. And so that farmers' livelihood is supported, that encourages them to grow more food. It creates a more abundance for our community, and then the food bank can have more food to distribute, and Table Pantry and other pantries, and we can source food into Meals on Wheels, and those gardens out at Shelby Farms would definitely have a place to take their produce. Let me stop, because I keep talking about how it's a great opportunity to, gardening is a mental solace. For those of us who are mentally challenged, it provides us a great way to, just get away. So I'm done.
And Haley, maybe this will be kind of geared towards you a little bit, but do you think we're all reaching, or one of my questions here as you were talking, like reaching the need of the Memphis community tied to food access? I mean, that's a question, like we kind of have flirted around it a little bit, and we're like, throwing out these numbers, right? Like, and I know Sally, you had said like, we don't, like there is an exponential amount of, of seniors, that are wanting to be in Meals on Wheels and also food insecure. But I think one of the things that people need to conceptualize is really what is the need? What's the larger need? And are we actually meeting it? And are these programs, like, where are we at with that, I guess, is the question.
So I would say yes and no. So mobile pantries are, I think, a great way to reach those neighborhoods that are underserved. So they might not have a pantry even before COVID happened. A lot of our partner agencies are closed when they might have been run by volunteers, and they're not comfortable being there, or they just needed to shut down because of their own safety, things like that. A lot of our partner agencies are run by older people and things like that. And so the mobile pantry program has done a great job to get into those neighborhoods that are food deserts. They might not have a grocery store there. They have a large lower income population. They have a larger senior population, things like that. And but a lot of those seniors might not be able to drive, or those lower income families not have a car. And a mobile pantry, you have to have a car. Like, you get so much food. It should last a family over 2 weeks to supplement the food that they can buy. And we have partnered with the Neighborhood Christian Center. They've more than tripled their senior delivery program to deliver those meals. So we just have a drawback on our program side because we don't have that direct relationship with people in need, just because of how food bank is set up, and we don't have the employees. So we heavily rely on volunteers and those agencies. And if agencies or volunteers can't distribute the food, then we can't give it to them. Does that make sense? So yes, I do think that we have the potential to reach all of those areas, but we have to form another partnership with people that can go beyond of what we can do. And I think somebody mentioned earlier silver lining, and I think mobile pantries, it's not really a silver lining, but it's really highlighted the need in our area. I go to those all the time, and I'll go talk to people that aren't at a mobile pantry, just out and about in town. And I'll say, have you seen the line at Isle of Wild Presbyterian? Because it's on Union, right across the street from Kroger. And people are like, yes, it's insane. And I was like, that's a mobile pantry. People wait in line. That one particularly serves 500 people. And it just like blows people's minds, because that's the 2020 version of a bread line. People are waiting in their cars to get food. So it's really brought attention to people that might not have seen that in our community. It's not so anonymous that people are going into agencies to find that food. They're waiting in their car and people can see those lines. And I think another way it's really brought attention to the need is before the pandemic, people might not have considered themselves potentially in a food insecurity position. They might not have thought of that before, and the job loss has brought them to that. And so they're finding themselves in those lines or needing assistance from an agency. So it brings that issue that they might not have faced last year to the forefront, and now they understand what other people have gone through. So it's bringing a little empathy and bringing the actual food insecurity issue to a bigger light.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's one of the things, you can easily slip into, a situation where you have needs. And I think that one of the questions that the students, the Food Recovery Network, wanted to address is kind of some of the stigmas. I think that probably all of your organizations to some degree combat, right, within the city of Memphis, whether or not it's gender, race, class, and all of these different kind of intersections, right, of those different variables or cultural variables. And so I guess one of the things that I'm just also curious about, since we are tied to Rhodes, and I know my students are also, this is actually one of my students reminded me of this, and they're not able to attend today, but they wanted to know, like, okay, so what can we do within, like, what can we do as college students, or what as a resident of Memphis, as a community member that, can help alleviate some of these issues within the city. And what can you give back, basically, I think, to whether or not it's tied to MIFA. But I guess, so I kind of have a twofold question as we wrap up here, because we really only have about 11 minutes left. But what do you think the city needs? And then, right, like, what do you think we as a city that is combating both hunger, but also obesity, right, in high rates, but then also how our community and our residents can become engaged in that process as well? I mean, it could be like, hey, we need the government to supply, more funding. Like, where did the COVID care go in these situations? You may want to talk about that, but then I think I want to also to bring it down to what can the individual, particularly maybe some of the students here at Rhodes College, what they can do as well.
I'll mention, I don't know whether this really answers your question, but I do want to mention it. We had a partnership at MIFA a few years ago with Baptist and Methodist hospitals, and they a senior upon discharge from the hospital would receive meals on wheels if the dietitian determined that was necessary. And fortunately at Methodist, then they were able to do a really deep dive into those patients' data and compare hospital utilization pre and post receiving meals. And the utilization went down by, like, overall utilization for those seniors. And these are seniors with serious issues. It's high blood pressure and diabetes and all of these things you've mentioned. And the overall utilization went down like 50%. So food is health. And it's a savings for the community. So I don't think it's just government funding, but I think it is it's a provider, and it's a health, and, everyone needs to come to the table. And that's just, research we have on the seniors, but it's true for families and children and everything else. So that's my soapbox, Mia. But I will say there are so many ways to volunteer, and there's so many ways to raise awareness, and folks that are on social media and doing all of those things, there's a way even during the pandemic to get engaged, and just encourage young or old to do that.
Yeah, I'll speak from less of like maybe a practical sense, but more of a kind of framework for viewing everything. Yeah, I would just, for college students, if you're wanting, I noticed that on the questions, there was a kind of focus on advocacy. So yeah, I would just encourage y'all to, if you're going to advocate from a relational and a proximal, like from proximity to people. Know the people who you're advocating for, because that's going to impact what you're advocating for if you know the people that you're advocating for, the situations that you're advocating for. So get close in proximity. I know it looks different with a pandemic, but as Sally mentioned, there's several ways to volunteer. And also commit to one place. I think the tendency can be to, this was me as a college student, to want to jump into everything and like do a little bit of everything. Commit to one thing and build relationships in that place. Endure even when it's not glamorous. I think that will lead you to a lot of and insightful things that you find out about yourself and about your community. So it doesn't have to involve financial giving, but if you give of your time, I know you're busy with classes and a lot of different things going on in your lives. But if you choose maybe one thing to invest in and do that well, then I think you're going to be able to see more of the impact and also be able to kind of have a better understanding and a deeper understanding of what advocacy can look like. And then I guess finally, I would say how your diagnosis of poverty alleviation or of food insecurity determines your response. So I think a lot of people have already touched on this, but understanding that people are multifaceted. So things like solutions need to be multifaceted. So all of us on this call, on the panel, are playing a different role in what that looks like. And together we're building a giant group of people who are doing different things and impacting in different ways. But I would say, yeah, just don't lose sight of the fact that people are multifaceted, that we're spiritual, mental, physical, psychological beings. And so addressing issues comes with understanding that people are complex. So solutions should be complex, and there's no silver bullet, and that's just a part of life. So to not get discouraged by that, I guess.
I'll just say I agree. Definitely give your time. We all are so busy and we all need volunteers. So there's no better way to see food insecurity, to give it a face, to give it a name, to know those people by volunteering. There's several places to do that. And also, we're all in our own little world, again, doing what we can to address hunger. And don't be afraid to come to any of us, to any organization, and say that you have an idea for a solution, that maybe you connected a dot somewhere else to see a bigger picture. Because we're looking at it at a micro level. This is what we do. This is how we can improve our response. But if you're saying like, oh, if they work here with them, don't be afraid. That's definitely something needed, and definitely all of us would really appreciate any kind of input in that way. So.
Mia or Timothy, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, sure. So because Memphis Tilth is an urban agriculture nonprofit, I'm always gonna say, more people should be growing food. That is the source of why we exist. We were 5 different organizations that came together: Grow Memphis, the Center for Food and Faith, Urban Agriculture, Bring It Food Hub, and the Food Advocacy Council all came together to create Memphis Tilth. And so with a focus on food and creating that local food system for Memphis, it just, I cannot encourage more to me, I'd like to see more people growing. So when I think of what students can do in order to support food production, food access, and how communities are getting to that, I would hope to see them volunteer of their time, of their talent, and if they can't provide that, some of their treasure. And so what time and talent looks like to supporting organizations like Memphis Tilth, MIFA, the Works, and the Food Bank, and also the Riverside community. What that could look like is coming out to provide that time, to volunteer. It may look like weeding and harvesting and watering in a garden space, but it could also look like packing produce bags to distribute in communities of need. It could look like delivery of produce to a pantry in one of our most disinvested communities. And so I like to believe that the earth is the great unifier, and that food as a product of it is one that brings us together. We learn about one another through food and through the culture of food as we grow through history in knowing where it came from and how to care for it, and then sharing it with friends. It's why I love Hispanic and Mexican food. Like Chinese is my go-to. Who would have thought that I would have been growing bok choy in 38126? But that's something that I can talk about with various members of my community. And so that's my encouragement on how to get into doing some of this work around the ag level. But if you just want to send a social media post every week, or if you would like to, help with a communication strategy, we welcome any type of assistance that we can get in the space. Thank you, Kimberly. And thank you all.
Thank you. Timothy, do you want to add anything else, or are you?
Well, they pretty much rounded all the bases, but one thing I would tell the students is, I guess it's a quote from Machiavelli, the Prince. Fortune favors the bold. When you're in these type of situations, or just in life, period, when you want to make a change and when you're trying to ascend to a new level, sometimes you just have to be bold. What throughout adversity or throughout, it may not look like it's going the way you anticipated. You just have to continue to be bold. That's what I would share with them.
I think that's great advice. You guys have all of you have done a wonderful job at articulating your organizations, and also I think giving some insight into how individuals, and we are dealing with food insecurity here within Memphis. One of the things that I'm going to do here post, I'm going to email you afterwards, is just ask for, some avenues that students may be able to engage through volunteer networks at your organizations and even in your communities. I think that will be really useful, and just having a database of sorts that students can access here at Rhodes. And if they want to be involved, they can. And so we really appreciate all of your work that you all are doing, and hopefully we can, it's going to be a tough, I think the reality is these next couple of months are going to be very tough on all of us. And so I think we need to pull together as a community in order to get through this, and hopefully we'll be okay on the other side. But thank you very much. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to email me in the next couple of weeks, and I will be happy to kind of network you into the right place. So thanks all, and we appreciate your time and coming in on a Thursday night.